Welcome to the Double D Do Business podcast by RLC with your hosts, Dave Evans and Debbie Halls-Evans, where they meet each week with guests and discover ways you can help yourself and others become best version businesses, teams, and people.
So we are back on Double D Do Business with one of our most favourite people in the whole world. And yes, Debbie, of course, that is naturally you too.
Thanks.
Just to clarify. Debbie, who have we got with us today?
We have got the delightful Colette Bell. Hello, Colette.
Hi, Dave. Hi, Debbie. Great to see you guys.
Yes, you too. So we can see each other, but nobody else can. We're just going to listen to the audio. So, and we've just both asked you in separate instances, is that your background real? And it is, which is, it's not a Zoom background, which is interesting because it looks awesome.
That's right. I like the way you tastefully had a dig at my background. That's very nicely done. But yours looks so real, it doesn't look real.
Right. That's usually what happens, right? The real looks fake and the fake looks real.
Exactly.
The whole thing. It's a bit like cognitive dissonance.
But your analogy, the fake looks real and the real looks fake, is a really good segue into what we want to talk about today, which is how do major brands cope with this last 6-7 months we've all gone through it as a global business community. And let's start off talking about what your experience of it has been like. So who do you work for, Colette? I mean, as if you'd work for anyone, really. They work for you, don't they?
No, not anymore. But I'm actually a member of the ACE Handyman Services franchise team. So I lead up their franchise development department.
And how has that been affected or impacted by what's been going on in the global world we're all part of?
You know, as we all know, with this interesting experience that we're having, both, personally and then with everybody's health and then economically with businesses, there's a spectrum of impact, right? Some people are very significantly impacted on the health and the emotional and the business side. And some people are actually on the other end of that spectrum and might even be benefiting from it. Not at others' expense, of course, but it's a spectrum always in life. We've been very fortunate. The handyman business has been listed as essential in all the 50 states in the United States throughout this COVID experience the last 6 months. And therefore, people who are looking to invest in a franchise concept have been more minded towards looking at concepts that are essential. Yeah. And I'll be honest, I've been doing this for a lot of years. There's nothing sexy about handyman. It's not a sexy industry by any stretch of the imagination. So in the past, it's been, very competitive to try and get people to look at our business model and consider us. But now that we're essential, it turns out essential is sexy. And so we've been very fortunate to bring a tremendous number of new franchisees into our model. And then our existing franchisees are doing very well. Again, very fortunate that our franchise concept is an employee-based model. So here in the United States, every single franchisee has secured the PPP loan, the EDIL loans, and therefore their businesses have been less financially impacted by this hardship.
Now we have to bring into the podcast.
Good old Monty.
Monty's back. He wants to come and sit on the
he
desk.
wants to say hi first. Say hi to Colette. Yes. Now off you go.
And now go and sit in the corner. So it's fascinating, and it's like any crisis. There's opportunity that is both disaster and success for some people. The bike industry in Britain is. Yes. If you want to go and buy a bike today, good luck. Right. They're out of stock. So
the mask, we've got a new industry of masks. We've got, we've got a new industry of protection. We've got a new industry of dividers. And we were talking about this in the last one, but it's really interesting. So it's great to hear there is success and people are actually effectively working through it. And I think that's really important because it gives hope to a lot of other people.
It does.
We can get through this.
Now, I want to ask you a question slightly sideways.
Why?
Actually, why not? And I moved sideways for those who you can't see this if you're listening to this, but I did move sideways, Debbie, didn't I?
Right.
Yeah. So my sideways question is, why why do you stay connected to RLC, Colette? What's your reason? I mean, I know we're a bunch of maddies at Double D Do Business. Debbie Halls Evans is a proper maddie, aren't you?
No.
Yes, you are.
No.
Debbie is official. You know, apologies to anyone listening. She has a phrase that she learned. What do you call it? Mad as a bat. What?
Mad as a box of frogs.
No, you don't. You say it's crazy as bat. Hyphen.
Oh.
Yeah, crazy as bat. What's it called?
Right.
You know that batshit crazy. That's it. Yeah. I was given her the chance to say that there. And so I know we both are a little bit of that. But what's your reason for staying connected to us?
Yeah. So besides the fact that you two are some of the loveliest people I've ever had the opportunity to spend time around and work with, and learn from, most importantly, what I have always loved about RLC is the message of, you know, coaching and consulting, and of course the technology that you have embarked upon, really ever since I've known the two of you, has made it a business model that allows people to grow their coaching and consulting business remotely, which certainly in this time, again, is so important to have that kind of an option where you can literally coach and consult people from all over the United States through technology, and not just do it, but do it so effectively. That's what I love about the RLC methods, the frameworks, everything that you offer to your customers and to your potential consults who join you, is a wealth of knowledge that you have now embedded in a technology that makes it 100% feasible to lead a life that serves you, instead of you having to, you know, slave and work away in a typical office setting. So.
And that link's lovely, and thank you for those awesome words.
Talk about me, Dave.
She was definitely talking about Debbie. And if you're inspired by what Colette's just said, reach out to us. We'd love you to talk to us about joining our team and helping us on our mission at RLC. But I think it also, again, segues, second use of the word segue, Debbie.
I see.
You actually see a set, what was it?
I actually see
those two things. They're very dangerous, aren't they? Anyway, the thing about this is it takes us to a place which I think is quite nice, which is that level of remote consistency, running your business in a way that suits you, is also the opposite of what many businesses have been doing in the last few months. What are some of the crazy things you've seen business industries doing or business owners doing in an attempt to cope with COVID?
Yeah, you know, it's really all over the board. When I talk to some business owners, and again, the franchise industry is pretty significant, a lot of headquartered businesses here, and even just in Colorado, there's over 100. What I find people doing is all over the board, but the theme of it is that they are trying crazy things to cope with COVID. And what they tend to forget is the business basics that brought them to success in the first place. And certainly in an environment like this, that's completely unknown to everybody. We all agree nobody's ever been through anything like this ever. They have a tendency to flail around, just, you know, spending money in this direction and not knowing if it's going to work, and spending money in that direction. Marketing, for example. I think people have really either completely stopped marketing, which we all know, business 101, that's a really bad idea, no matter what's going on in the industry, or they have abandoned their typical marketing tactics and tried completely new ones. This is not the time to experiment. No. Really isn't. What I tell people all the time when I talk to them is, what got you to where you are in the first place? Go back to those very basic business tenets that got you to where you're at, and then let's figure out how you can adjust based on the COVID circumstances. So, you know, I think we've seen some of the restaurants that were in a really good shape in terms of standard takeout. That was what part of their business model was in the first place. You know, those are the restaurants that are going to survive in this kind of environment, because we're all having food delivered at this point, and looks like that's the near future for all of us. So
I heard something quite alarming yesterday from Florida with Vince about how there's now a shortage of takeout equipment because there's so much takeout being used, so restaurants can't actually get food.
The little cups and the styrofoam boxes. And again, Debbie, talking about a new industry that now has an opportunity. Think about all those manufacturers of those kinds of items that takeout restaurants need. Now, when every restaurant becomes a takeout restaurant, they can't keep up with the manufacturing. So
Yeah, and I agree with you. I think we forget and we get lost in, and it's fear, isn't it? It's panic. We've never been through this before, so it needs something so innovative, so new, because this is new, that's going to fix it. Well, and I agree with you. There's some really clear business basics, and if we forget why we're doing something, or why we started our business, or who our client is, then we're going to get lost and we will fail, and that will be really hard.
Really important thing that was in between those two things you said, Debbie, is the recipe you've already left behind you. So actually stopping and noticing it. Oh, if I do these 5 things all the time, they work. And staying true to, and I love the word you use, your own business tenets that got you here. I think that's a great message, because it's very easy to flail around, flap about a bit and go, what's going to happen? We often talk about together when we're walking about, I wouldn't want to be living in the US today dealing with your media coverage. It is so confusing. From too much news to fake news to conspiracy to real to control to not. And then the real crisis is, how do you...
Well, I don't think it's just the US. I think there is a global media right now is actually exacerbating.
It's where Colette lives.
I know that, but you said you wouldn't want to live in the US right now.
Coping with that specifically. Right. It's the end of the sentence, Debbie. It is, yeah. It's not that. I didn't say I want to live in the US. I said right now in those conditions, because a citizen, how do they work it out? And what if they can't? That's just so hard to work out. So if you take that in and you go into your job that day, how less effective are you by whatever it is you might have read or heard? So the only action, I think, is to take your head out of it for a bit.
Yes.
Completely. And not ignore it, but go, no, I have to stop. That's not helping me. And then only find 1 or 2 sources to help you get through it. But coming back to this, I remember when you were helping us working out the 24-month framework model of looking at a longer span of time to build in business agility and to build in business flexibility. I think when you remember you have that, and coming back to your point, doing what you once did that worked is a much better strategy when you're in changing times.
So my question would be to you two, because most people ask me questions, is what are the 3 things, so Dave can answer first, Colette, what are the 3 things people should be doing as a business 101 right now?
Number 1 is do what Colette says.
Always do what Colette says. That's a rule of life, by the way.
Number 2 is when you finish the first question, which was do what Colette says.
Answer them properly.
I will answer them properly. Is you have to check if you've done number 1. That's question 2. And then question 3 is you've got to ask what will Colette do. Debbie.
Right, carry on.
So ask me the question again, Debbie.
What are the 3 things you must do to go back to business 101? What are the 3 things?
Number 1 is have a business framework. Have a plan.
Yeah.
Right. Number 2.
So I'm giving you my answers. Yeah. Make sure the story of your plan is known by everybody in your business.
Right. Number 3.
Number 3.
I'm dragging this out.
No, I'm actually taking my time on purpose. Execute your plan, Debbie.
Okay, Colette, wipe the floor with him, please.
No, I don't. I think all I can really do is add on to that. I always felt like the biggest value that RLC provides to their clients is that written plan. Especially for people, not just people who are starting into business, but, like ourselves, we've been in business for 22 years. It's easy over that time to forget, what was your original mission? What was the original vision? Who were the basic customers that you started this whole thing off of? And you have to remember those things because, for heaven's sakes, that's what got you to where you are. So I love the opportunity that RLC provides for that plan. And then, as you said, Dave, that provides a vehicle for communication to everybody in the company. And over time, we add employees and we go through the, here's what our health insurance is and here's our vacation policy. But we forget to talk about why did we start this business? Who do we serve? And what is our mission within this business? And then, the last thing I always think about is really, from the beginning, you should have, and if you're in business and successful, it wouldn't have happened without this. But remember the relationship to your customers. those companies, no matter how big or how small, especially what I see in the United States, who worked on a positive relationship with their customers or clients, are the ones who are now being basically supported by them, right? And I've heard of stories all over where, you know, people had to close their small clothing boutique, but their customers were buying gift cards so that they could give them money so that they could stay in business to survive the COVID virus. You don't do that just because. You do that because you have a relationship with that business, and the business has a relationship with their customers. Your customers will carry you through these kinds of events if you have a relationship from the beginning with customers.
So just to summarize back, Debbie, the answers to your wonderful questions to Colette and I today, it was do what Colette said, after all. Wasn't it? We're in agreement, I think.
We're in agreement.
We're in agreement.
We're in agreement.
I think I always love that. I remember when we did our consult training in Denver last year, and you were there with us.
Not last year.
It was last year, last March.
Was it?
Yeah. Does that help?
Wow.
Debbie's lost track of time for a second. Yeah. And there were moments where we'd stop and pause, and you'd literally grab the room's attention with a bit of wisdom from what you had observed and knew of what we teach. And the room just would stop in its tracks and go, yeah, I better do that. And I think you retain that ability, Colette, to add to what you see going on around you. And I think that's a real gift. And it must be great for Ace Handyman to have that in their team.
Well, thank you, Dave. It's so, easy isn't the right word, but the RLC teachings and the business basics that you guys have always focused on have just resonated so strongly. I wish I had known you back in the early days. I think we probably would have grown the business faster and made less mistakes along the way. So really, I encourage everybody, if you're not familiar with RLC, or if you've just, made a brief introduction, it's well worth the time and investment to learn what Dave and Debbie are doing, because it's hugely business impactful. It's also personally impactful. You guys are great about keeping the personal in business, which I think, again, leads to relationships with your employees and your customers, and that's what makes it a fuller life. I can't remember, I heard how many hours we normally spend working compared to doing everything else in our lives. And it's such a significant time. You really should be doing it with people that you enjoy on a mission that everybody's bought into.
Yeah, and I think I want to believe that this will have a fundamental shift change for people seeing life balance, not work-life balance, but a life balance in how we actually start to regard relationships, human connectivity, the importance of what is really important. Business allows us to provide great service to many people, but it's got to give back, and I think that's the bit we've got to remember. What is it that we are all consistently giving back to others? So whether it's, the different podcast people that we've had on here, but in regards to is they'll help other people, they'll do charity work, they'll volunteer, they'll give their time to something that's relevant and important to them. But I think Dave's always believed in the power of abundance, and you give first without any reciprocal want or desire or need, because it does come back. Sometimes it takes a long time. We've had clients come back after 10 years and go, I need to do this again. And you're like, wow, or they'll remember something and they'll recite something that you said to them 5 years ago in a coaching session. You'll go, I said that. That was brilliant.
And you're more concerned about it not being offensive at that moment in time, because you clearly.
That's just you.
That's just me. Yeah. That's just you. But I think Debbie, I think there's one thing that COVID, I think, has forced us all to accept is that previous things we thought were important aren't.
Very true.
And that can be a whole range of things. But there is an opportunity to have a mathematical equation almost with an employee that says, we're going to be as flexible as you like in exchange for. It's a trade agreement, isn't it? Right. And then we can all be as flexible as we want and working where we want and being more involved in our lives. Just think about commuting as a waste of your lifetime, right? That we force people to do. Doing that intentionally, like anything else intentionally, is a much better use of time. So I think there's a trade agreement to be had between employees and companies in the future.
I also think, and this will be really interesting to get your perspective, Colette, is our definition of essential. So if you listen to what a handyman's doing, it's essential because actually without the support of that, things won't function. Things will not physically happen. We need things fixing. We need things doing. And our definition of what we've perceived societally as essential is not essential. You know, we've needed people to work in supermarkets. We've needed what we have as a society graded as low value work, low value. We don't pay people enough money who stock shelves, who drive vans, who do. Those are actually the people that have kept the global society connected. And I think that, to me, the word essential is the bit that people will start to see differently.
Although a couple of weeks ago, right, maybe a couple of months ago, I talk about essential, and your point's really noted, Debbie. We were driving down in a country road, weren't we, down towards Ettrick in one of the borders of Scotland, and talk about essential. This BT engineer, right, British Telecom, gets out of his van, doesn't he?
Oh, right.
Yeah,
where you going
I know. And there's this tiny lamb stranded by the side of the fence beside this tiny busy road, and he's picking the sheep up and putting it back in the field. That's essential. So not only was he fixing broadband and internet Wi-Fi, he was saving cattle at the same time. That's essential.
That's not what I was saying.
I know that's not what you were saying.
But I understand, yes.
Thanks
for sharing that.
My pleasure, my pleasure. I was relieved that Debbie didn't ask me to do it, because you would have, wouldn't you?
Yeah. Save
the sheep. Anyway, there's a highlight for Double D New Business today. Let's move this subject on a bit. But I agree with you, Debbie. What we deem essential will have changed permanently.
But it takes you back to our original conversation. What's essential in your business?
Yeah.
So essential is we've got to have a relationship with our customers. Companies do treat their customers as second-class citizens. It's as though they're not essential. Well, they are. So treat them better, be more respectful, be more caring, listen better to your customers. And I suppose the other essential elements are what we've seen is big businesses and small businesses make decisions and action really quickly because they had a clear defined goal. People have got to be working from home. They've got to be working in the home. What can we do? And what people have realized is essential is clarity, communication, which you both highlighted, and actually doing, instead of spending hours in meetings, let's just do stuff and make it happen. And I think those are the bits. If you can go back and look at your business model and say, what are Dave always says, between 5 and 10 things that you do consistently that deliver a result. What are they? And most people can't tell you straight away. But once they start reflecting back, it's great in sales as well. You know, what are the 10 things I say that always get me a sale? What are the 10 things that I do that prepare me for success? You do say that.
I know I do. I just enjoy you repeat it back.
But I think it takes us back to the business 101 is what is essential in your business? What are you doing about it? Because that's what people forget. They don't do it, do they?
No. And even more basic than that, Debbie, employees are essential.
Yeah.
And certainly, with the circumstances that we have in the United States where, the government did a good thing by adding on to unemployment insurance, but it's also been a negative thing because people have not been willing to go back to work. Yeah. They didn't want to risk their health, and they were making just as much money staying at home. Businesses can't run without employees. And on the other side of that, businesses are essential to people who want to go back to work, right? Yeah. If the business can no longer be open, then, so I do think, and I try and remind myself of this every day, in the circumstance of chaos, there's always an opportunity for gratitude. And there's a lot of opportunities for gratitude. I do think this has been so extensive, long, and jarring that we really are going to have a shift in the way we think and the way we act going forward. I think if this had been a month long and maybe not had as much impact, we would have all, made a reaction and then we'd have gone back to habits as normal. I do think this is going to make a difference for people and business long term.
So do I.
I hope so. I genuinely hope so, because I think there's an opportunity, and I've said it for quite a while, is that, we are at the cusp of some revolution, whatever that revolution is. Our last one was industrial, I suppose some people would say it's a technology revolution, but I think there is something, and maybe this is actually a human revolution. We're gonna be better humans at the end of it, which therefore means that we'll have better businesses and we'll be more effective, and we'll actually give a hoot about employees, customers, people, just people,
communities, humans, yeah.
God, that's quite deep for us, isn't it?
All of a sudden, all of a sudden.
I love the human revolution. I
like the human revolution. No, all hail the human revolution. Let's
Absolutely.
go for it.
So, Colette, is there one thing you'd like people to, remember from the conversations that we're having today, from your perspective, and then same thing to Debbie?
Yeah, I think for me, in my experience, the businesses that are flourishing, not just surviving this crazy time, but flourishing, are those who have remained centered to their purpose. And my guess would be that only happens if they took time to be intentional about documenting their purpose and sharing that purpose with every employee that works for them and represents their business. And so I would say to people, if you feel like you're wandering around a little bit lost, it's time to really document a purpose and communicate that purpose. And of course, from my perspective, there's no better way to do that than to get in touch with RLC. So.
I like it. Dave's not really good at doing those kind of pitches, so I like that a lot. Mine would be, many years ago, I used to have a motto for the group that I used to work with, and it was live it, love it, do it. And I think part of that was about us living life to the fullest capacity that we can, whether that's, we're all dealing with something. Everybody's got a story, and even more so now, I think, right now in society. But to live life to our fullest capacity, to love as much as we possibly can, because it goes back to your element of, gratitude. Gratitude is, to me, that's what love is. Walking down a country lane and actually seeing nature around us and observing, what we've done to the environment and how the world's healing itself without us doing anything, which is even scary when you think about it. But also just to take some action, and that action is whether I'm going to communicate better, whether I'm going to be a better boss, whether I'm going to be a better person to other people I meet and strangers, whether I'm going to be more patient, or whatever that means. So that's what I would take from this, because to me, business.
It's not one thing, though, is it?
It's live it, love it, do it. No, it's not.
That is. So I'm glad you came back to that, because that's important. Because then all the detail of what you were sharing makes sense. Because I think put those two things together, and I think that if you're listening to this today, applying that in your life and in your business, why wouldn't you? Mm-hmm. I also like the fact that you highlighted purpose, because I think we all get lost with why. Yeah. And it's really confusing, isn't it? Where you always get stuck there, whereas purpose with intentionality should be the output of a great why, but the why sometimes can get in the way of it, because you get lost in a theoretical street. Whereas I love the way you put it really cleanly today, and that's good to think about. So, Colette, it leaves us to say thank you so much for your time.
Thank you very much.
And this has been Double D Business. We've been talking to Colette Bell from Ace Handyman Matters as well. And I have to say, some of the insights and feedback today from her are priceless. So do listen back to this and give things a little bit more thought, because as Colette, you did say, now is the time to stop and maybe make sure, are you doing things on -purpose? Every success with your learning.
You've been listening to the Double D Do Business podcast, brought to you by RLC and sponsored by CoachPad, the coaching tool built for you by coaches for coaches. If you would like any assistance or help for what you've heard today, please feel free to get in touch with us at info@rlc-global.com. That's info@rlc-global.com. And we would be delighted to hear from you. Wishing you every success with your learning.